Good morning and welcome to the Capital Gang. I am Oscar Semayam Soke, and this morning we have three topics for discussion. The first two are kind of related. All three are actually very related. In the studio, I have my favorite daring lawyer, Mr. Aaron Kiza, a human rights lawyer. Great to have you back on Gang.
Thanks. It's always a delight to be here, and I'm happy to learn that I'm one of your favorite lawyers.
Yes, thank you. We'll adjust your microphone a little bit so that you're louder. And then I have Edgar Tabaro.
No, it can't be Edgar.
Kwezi Tabaro. You know, I have Edgar Tabaro, eh? And this is Kwezi Tabaro.
Yeah.
I'll actually stop calling you Edgar.
You're not the first one, because I think
he does the same.
Yes, I think Edgar and I need to host the press conference too.
You should, yes, and you know, but welcome to Gang. I have Robert Kirenga. Good morning, Robert Kirenga.
Good morning to you, Oscar.
Executive Director, National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders, Uganda. Then I have Katesh Dixon Rumba, MP. You're most welcome back to Gang.
Thank you very much, Oscar, and good morning, listeners.
And it does look like you're heading to some function. I see the jacket is quite serious and fancy.
This is the function I came for.
This is the function you came to. So, Robert Kienga,
Yes, Oscar.
Human Rights Week. What's the state of Human Rights Week, human rights in Uganda?
Well,
Because we've hosted you here before. I don't know, you say maybe Uganda is improving in terms of defending human rights or maintaining human rights. And I'm sure Aaron here will strongly disagree.
sure.
We shall agree.
You shall agree.
Thank you very much, Oscar, for that question, and good morning to our listeners. It's a pleasure to be here. Your question is such a broad one that you require the head of the National Human Rights Institution to answer that question. But to be placed something in perspective, it keeps fluctuating. If you ask me today, we enjoy some relative freedoms. Right now, we're enjoying the freedom of expression. The mere fact that we're on the radio and are able to speak out what we want to speak out, that alone is a tick. However, we still have a lot of challenges, especially when it comes to the rule of law and respect for human rights. Access to justice is still a challenge to many of our citizens, most especially the indigent persons, those who cannot afford services of a lawyer. Detention beyond the 48-hour rule is still a big problem. And we still have incidences of torture. One big problem that we haven't solved since the 2022 November incidents are the enforced disappearances, which are still a subject matter. And other cases of human rights abuses and violations that have occurred in different areas. When it comes to socio-economic rights, the right to health is still a challenge in terms of accessing medical care. Employment is still a challenge with the young population. We still have challenges in terms of accessing good services. You know how they refer our city to when it comes to the potholes. So we still have quite a lot of challenges. When it comes to group rights like the environment, that's another big challenge. People working in the Albertine region will tell you what the oil and gas challenges that are there. Deforestation, the cutting down of forests, the encroachment on swamps. So the right to a clean and healthy environment is equally affected. So a whole range of rights, talk about civil political rights, socio-economic rights, and group rights, we still have a big challenge. Nevertheless, we have a very strong legal framework. Uganda is one of those countries that has ratified the most number of international human rights instruments. But it's one thing to ratify an instrument, and it's another thing to domesticate or implement that one. We have a very good constitution that has a broad range of rights. Chapter 4 gives you a whole Bill of Rights, and for us we see that as a plus. We also have laws. One of the good laws that we have here is called the Human Rights Enforcement Act of 2019, where individuals can be held personally liable for violating or abusing human rights. We have the whole law that prohibits and prevents torture. So those are very good laws, but as I indicated earlier, it's one thing to have good laws and it's another to implement the same laws, Oscar.
Well spoken. And for you as a defender of human rights, what challenges do you face on a daily?
The nature of the work of human rights defenders is a very risky one. By definition, a human rights defender is any individual who, in association with others or individually, protects and promotes human rights using non-violence. So it means speaking truth to power, and there are people who feel they should not be held accountable. So when human rights defenders go to speak about the injustices happening, the failure to observe the rule of law, they tend to touch on people's toes, and therefore they receive all sorts of threats. These threats manifest themselves in intimidation, harassment, physical assault, arrests or detentions, including worst case scenarios like killings. We've had human rights defenders who have disappeared. We have human rights defenders who have been killed as a result of their work. So they continue to face threats. At an organizational level, when you look at the legal framework that governs human rights organizations, that's the NGO Act, you find it's more restrictive than an enabling law.
Do you feel it is unfair when we think that maybe you're not doing enough? Because our third topic today is the executive has finally presented something on the missing 18. But where have you, the defenders, been?
Oh, we are part of the group that raised it. The only thing that you gave it audience simply because it came from the House, that's the legislature. But others, we raised these things long ago, especially when we were monitoring elections, that there were killings, there were disappearances, but it has just come to the limelight because the biggest political party, opposition party, raised it in the House of, on the floor of Parliament and did some action. But others, we've been trying to document some of these cases and raising them in the various reports that we present to government and other partners who are interested in the situation of human rights in this country.
Okay, over to you, Mr. Aaron Kiza, advocate, human rights lawyer. In these recent times, people say things like, what color of drone do you want to come and pick you up? So it means there's a kind of better understanding or realization that human rights are not, we are not in a good place in Uganda. If there are jokes like that, what color drone would you like?
Even may have been asked which color you want. So
the last time you were on Gang, I did ask you which color drone you'd like to pick you up after the show, because you worried me so much.
Well, happily I didn't, and thanks to the work of human rights defenders like Bob and the rest, and of course some people who are good, even in the government. Uganda has good people all over, including in the government, even in the parliament, the likes of Katesh. So they ensure they push back against excesses of the wrong guys who unfortunately have an upper hand because they are blocking rule of law, they are blocking everything. My idea of the human rights situation in the country, to summarize it, is that it's in a crisis because the pillars on which it should stand are shaky. Parliament is not independent. Judiciary, the independence keeps being nibbled at every opportunity, including by the president, who even recently at the Ben Chwanuka Memorial had the audacity to actually tell them in their faces that what is judicial independence? Sometimes he even uses humor to box and kick them in the mouth of our constitution. So he asked them, and to my dismay, not even the Chief Justice replied him. Not even the Chief Justice replied him.
What could he have said?
I mean, they know what judicial independence is, they should have at least given him the basics of it and reminded him that people were gathered to celebrate the life of Ben Chiwanuka simply because he stood up for judicial independence. So without judicial independence, we cannot have a great human rights situation in the country. We need our parliament to be more assertive and more respected, and we need the civic space in which most human rights defenders operate to be more open. We need the media to be not censored. And unfortunately, on the media, it is censored by both the commercial interests and, of course, the political interests. There has been a long-standing campaign against media independence from state agencies, especially the licensing, the regulators who want to license even so-called video bloggers, bloggers of all sorts of things. There's even a time they published a list of 39 journalists who are about to be suspended and so on and so forth. So we need a vibrant media for human rights to take root. We need human rights defenders to be safe. There is a time a parliamentary human rights committee had recommended to pass within 6 months the legal aid bill, the witness protection bill, the human rights defenders bill. There was actually an attempt by the last parliament to pass some of those laws, but unfortunately, I think somehow, and I know some people here might have more knowledge about it, somehow it didn't work. We had to do it again. But legal aid is one of the biggest roadblocks, the lack of legal aid law to access to justice in the country and the realization of human rights. Because human rights remain on paper if people cannot access a court. And people cannot access a court, even if it was in the compound there, if they don't have some modicum of resources. Because people don't know these laws. Even if they knew their rights, they don't know how to enforce them. People need to be helped by professionals in accessing human rights. So there is a monetary roadblock between the people of Uganda and human rights, even those ones they could access. Yeah. So
Aaron, how useful is when we have a Human Rights Week? Is it merely symbolic?
No, it's not symbolic, because human rights struggle is a continuum. Even in developed societies, democratic societies we aspire to be, they are human rights issues which they are still contending with. As long as we have human life, there will be human rights on which there can be improvement. So we shall always have the necessity of a Human Rights Week. What we should ask ourselves is, how well are we doing? Are we living in human rights standards still in Precambrian times, or are we, by human rights standards, living in modern day?
Let's go to Kwezi Tabar.
Yes, please.
Human rights in Uganda. Where are we now? And I know you know quite a lot of East Africa and a little bit more. So maybe don't compare us with them. But where are we?
Well, wouldn't you ask the same question about economic freedom, political freedom, state of our environment? I think human rights are much broader than we tend to define them. And a lot of times we are lost in, fights over a very small component of what would have been a very wide spectrum.
I.e. political.
So political rights, media freedoms, no doubt they are very important. But at the end of the day, human rights stand or exist on a certain foundation. And that foundation is economic freedom or prosperity. Once Ugandans have something, or they produce something, and the economic situation is much better, they will agitate for these human rights without the need for the Aaron Kizas to come and articulate, their own rights for them. Not that his work is not important, but I think we've had this discussion for the last 30 years, and I hate to make comparisons. It's not just Uganda, in Kenya, in Zambia, in all over sub-Saharan Africa. The human rights situation today is not so different from where it was 30 years ago. So what has changed? Is it that we don't have enough of the Aaron Chisas, the Chirengas of this world? What is also clear is that the economic situation of the average African has also significantly not changed in the last 25 years. And if we are able to address the economic situation of our people, human rights will become a much smaller concern for us. For me, the biggest concern is that in our region now, 27 years from now, in 2050, 4 of the 6 most populous countries in Africa, if not the world, will be in our region. Uganda amongst them, Uganda, DRC, Tanzania, and Ethiopia. Those are millions of our young people who will need to put food on the table, who will need employment, who will need education opportunities. That is a much bigger concern for me. And how do you address that concern? Improve the economic situation. How do you improve the economic situation? Address the issues of economic freedom. And once we have that, Aaron will not even have to run around to look for, well-wishers outside there to support his work defending human rights. Uganda will have the capacity to, to support the kinds of people that Aaron Kiza and the others are, to support their work. So for me, fundamentally, I disagree with the premise that, yes, the human rights situation in Uganda is deplorable, but so is our, economic situation, and we need to address that first before, we deal with what
But
I presume to be much smaller.
Is in the politics at a higher level?
But it all stems from the same. The quality of our democracy, the quality of our democracy is determined by economic situation. You are in a situation where you can't even enforce a decision made by your own parliament. There are sanctions imposed against you. And some people outside there who proclaim that, they support the rule of law, institutions and all that, will want to subvert the will of Ugandans arrived at by their representatives through, a call or pressure, economic pressure on our political leadership. If you live in such a situation, then human rights, sorry to say, are the least of your worries.
Katesh.
First of all, I on your behalf, let me welcome my brother, Honorable Abdu Katuntu.
Thank you.
Welcome up to the parliamentarians today. The shirt, the jacket.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know if there's been a new bonus in Parliament.
Honorable, for your information, Honorable Katuntu is the chair of the organizing committee of the upcoming Commonwealth Presiding Officers Conference. So don't ask why he has come in late. He's a very busy man. He will be hosting 74 speakers in January.
Now I see the shirt.
And I'm assisting him in some ways. Now, back to the issue of human rights. It's a Human Rights Week. My thinking is that we should be doing a self-reflection on who are the contributors to the betterment of human rights in Uganda. And in my small analysis, I think I've categorized them under 9. Security services, and here I talk about armed. Police, military, prisons, intelligence, and other armed services like OA, etc. We should be saying, okay, how have these institutions performed?
When you said
rights?
like OA, I thought you were going to say like CMI.
No,
joint
CMI,
what
I
and
said
what and what.
those are
Because there are many.
services. Because they have different mandates, they have different standard operating procedures, so we should be able to say from the studies this is what is coming out. Rather than looking at blanket assumption. When someone says that human rights situation is deplorable, I tend to respectfully disagree in some ways. The second category are the citizens. What do we contribute? One time, I was in one of the countries, I think it was South Korea, and I was moving on the street with a colleague. There were 2 Ugandans ahead of us speaking Uganda, and we just heard you know, one of them was saying, you know, how did I come here? Eh? Na ekubabanda jini ngamba, you know, I'm under harassment. What? So there are other things I will not say that the person mentioned. How he got sympathy to be able to be taken in, right?
Why was he bereaved?
Yeah, that I think. Let me finish my submission, Aaron.
Why couldn't he be believed?
I'm talking about the role of citizens. What is our role? Have we had citizens who have taken the laws in their hands to, you know, detect the mean people, encroaching people's human rights? We have had cases here. A lady who was killed here in Kampala because he had a debt. So we should be able to do that analysis. Number 3, the political actors, us politicians. During elections, sometimes people focus on, you know, police, what, but I can tell you, there are political actors who actually, you know, take laws into their hands. In my own constituency, some time back, the people were beaten. People hire goons, politicians, on their own. So, political actors, where are we standing? Both the ruling and even the opposition. Because there are people who have gone on the microphone and say, beat them because they are wearing this. And when they come out, they cry out. Number 3 is the parliament. We need to do our reflection. What is our responsibility? The laws are there. We have done them. If there is anything we need to amend, we can amend. We've put the laws. We have a committee on human rights. It has received petitions. They have had petitions. Okay? What is lacking on our side? What can we do better? Judiciary. Number 5. I heard people talk about access to justice, delays. Can we do, you know, the other day we were passing the law in Parliament. Can we look at people who have been, for example, on remand, even beyond their supposed sentences, if they are to be sentenced? How many are they? I mean, some of our people who are defenders of human rights focus on the surface. How many people are incarcerated without on remand when they have even served beyond their sentence if they were sentenced? The cases, there are judges, I'm told, who left their positions 8 years ago, but he has not made a judgment. Big people. I cannot mention names. They are there. These people keep quiet about them. You have moved on from the judiciary, you are maybe in another responsibility, but you have rulings seated for 8 years. You've not done them. So access to justice. And then you will blame the last stakeholder you talk about. Human Rights Commission. How is their performance? The media. What is their role? Has the media itself, both formal, informal, respected human rights? This era where everybody is a journalist, you wake up and declare someone dead. You have encroached when he's alive. You have encroached on on people's human rights. So what do we talk about them? You know, the NGOs. Before the NGOs, let me talk about His Excellency, because he's the key stakeholder. The President, the head of state, Commander-in-Chief. I don't think there is a president Uganda has had who has been very clear on issues of human rights. I have seen the letters he has written to the security services, very clear. And I remember as a young man in Shema, one time I witnessed, before this government came in power, people being arrested, suspected, being tied, and they get this jerrycan and put it on fire, and they are undergoing torture, and it was systematic across. The president has come out, guided on human rights. That notwithstanding, we need to look at the actors, individuals within services who may be violating, and what do we demand government take on? Finally, the NGOs. They are
like Robert Kirengas.
Well, I don't want to talk about Robert. I don't know much about him, but he looks a very sober man. But I'll talk about NGOs in general. There are people who think they are more concerned about human rights in Uganda than the people of Uganda or the government. And they speak out loud. I know, personally, I strongly believe that anyone's human rights should never be trampled on. This is my position. However, my brother here talked about economic rights. And when we talk about most of the NGOs and their funders, they just like to focus on human rights. I remember last year early this year, we were engaging the European Parliament. I had the chance to accompany the Deputy Speaker. We were engaging EU Parliament and German Parliament. And that was the time when this law was being debated in Parliament. And I can tell you, this is when I saw hypocrisy in this world. You talk about human rights without economic rights. You want to put sanctions on a country like Uganda because of supposed human rights, knowing that your sanctions have the worse impact on people's human rights. And you cannot put sanctions on economies like, in the Arab world, Qatar, which have even more strict laws, but because you think Uganda is your pet subject, you must put human rights, because Parliament of Uganda has passed a law, and then you are impacting on people's human rights, economic rights. Currently, the European Union passed something called GSP, the Generalized Scheme of Preferences, for developing countries to access markets. You look at it, it's just ridiculous. They are talking of human rights, environment, labor laws, good governance. Very good English. But when you go down to human rights, what are they talking about? That for us to export bananas, cocoa, or whatever, we must stress on the farm, was there a child laborer? Excuse me, when I was growing up, one of my duties was to pick coffee to get school fees. Are you going to tell me that I did wrong? If we are talking of, boat labor, that but if you say that I cannot take my coffee from Bishenyi to access EU market, you must come and certify who was the farmer who supplied the food. It's just not practical. It is curtailing economic rights of developing countries. And we have made it clear in our discussions with EU that as you discuss human rights, there is no human rights without economic rights. And we must stop the hypocrisy. And the defenders here must extend their amplification to cover all these aspects.
I haven't seen Katesh this animated and passionate. He really thought about
and I agree with him.
Which is such
valid point.
Which is also a rarity. But Namfi, let me say to the audience that you are in the studio now and that you can speak.
Oscar came about an hour ago.
Abdul, when Katesh says even the president has been against that, sometimes you smile, because I remember that the president in his very angry speech, he said security service must not even back at a person. And the people I was with, we all laughed and said
Reid, I don't know your question.
None.
Are you telling me
Human
about
Rights Week.
you must not back at a person?
Yes.
One, let me set one for myself.
Because
First of all,
I didn't bother with Katesh. I tried to set one for him. He answered 20.
As far as I'm concerned, we have enough legislation on our statute books about human rights, ranging from our constitution. It is quite elaborate. The whole chapter 4, in detail, is all about human rights. And it goes to each and every aspect, whether discrimination based on race, creed, color, religion, everything. A right to life, protection of property, to religious belief, detention without trial, everything is there, including the creation of the Human Rights Commission and also the law emphasizing their independence. So it is not that we don't have laws. And when you look at even other laws that come up regarding children, regarding women, it is all about the enforcement of human rights. However, despite a very good legal regime we have, we still have challenges. Obviously, Aaron, sometimes they have chosen to look at the most controversial human rights aspect, that's political. I'm alive to the fact that politics governs the entire of our sphere of life. Even if you talk about economic scartage, it is governed by the politics. Because the politics is the decision maker.
And there's life, there's impunity,
there is
power.
The politics is all about government, because I'll give you an example when you're talking about rights of children. Let us look at child labor in this country. How many families have got these young little girls as house girls, and how much are they paying them? And tell me, what has government done? So there are so many aspects. There are so many aspects of human rights which we should be looking at. But sometimes we concentrate, like he says, it's not that they're important, they are not important, they are very, very important political rights. But where you've got contestations of political power, Oscar, another group uses it as a spear, the issue of human rights. Then another one must have a shield. And at the end of the day, it's the people who suffer, because everybody is using it politically. You have a group in government now, because it's supposed to be defending, establishing systems ranging on members, for example, of their security forces, to not commit human rights. It goes on the defensive mode, and you don't have a honest conversation, and that's where the problem is. These are the aspects of which are equally important, and I'm excited these days. The Parliamentary Committee on Human Rights is trying to reevaluate its work, and they have spread out. They are looking now at other aspects of human rights. But those are not very interesting for social media and the mainstream media, including a show like this one. We would like to say the other one was arrested and something squeezed between his, and then that's a headline and so on. But if there is this 4-year-old, 6-year-old girl gotten from the village in Miss Namfuka's home, and she's a house girl, no chance for school, she's being mistreated as a maid and so on, let me tell you, they will not report about some of those issues. So if you are talking about a media week or a human rights week, we really need to be debating the entire sphere of human rights across the board. That's how we can be useful to our people. But it is all about politics. It's all about politics. Yes, and I don't want to be mistaken that politics is less important. Actually, I know it is very, very important. In the Parliament, obviously, the last 7 weeks, I think it has just been the issue of abductions. It has captured media, both mainstream media and social media. If we are talking about rights of girls, I don't think it will attract even a quarter page. It will not.
In some ways it has, but for example, when one of the girls tortures a child under their care, then people pay attention. But
it's really once in a while.
The politics, I mean, you look at Gaza, isn't that the politics, and how human rights have been trampled on completely?
Which one?
In this Israeli-Gaza war.
Oh yes, I mean, this is indiscriminate killing and profiling the entire community. These are terrorists. You can bomb everybody and so on. So, and then you are supposed to be the biggest defender of democracy in the world. You are the United States, and you are supplying all these weapons of mass destruction to bomb the entire community. You know, destroy the infrastructure. You know, besiege. It's something which incredible. Sometimes when you, unless, you know, the other day the Honorable Mpuga was saying that if you want to know when if you feel pain, then you're alive. But if you feel the pain of others, then you're a human being. I think sometimes people are not human beings. They're just not human beings. So our colleagues who are in the sector of defending these human rights, by the way, they have done a good job, pretty good job. You see them, you know, they have invested, they are writing. Sometimes it's not even people like Aaron, I don't know who pays him, but they are passionate about these issues. But they go out all the way even when they are not paid. You know, he comes to a show like this, I don't think he has somebody has paid his fuel to come and articulate these issues. So he's picking his family money to come and talk about human rights issues.
Human rights.
Yeah, and that you must defend them. Yeah, others are paid, of course. The NGO can pick the bill, but there are many others out there who really are helping.
Yeah.
But it's continuous. It's not something by the end of the week, Oscar, for you to say that as far as we are concerned, there is no issue of human rights. That is work in progress. It will continue being so.
Namfi, you're on microphone now. Go to the microphone, Namfi.
Guantanamo. Remember the US and Guantanamo?
Kissinger.
Namfi,
he died this week.
I know. And the things that came out of what he did in Vietnam.
Even in Cambodia. Yeah?
I asked Aaron here,
Pakistan and
what
Bangladesh.
color of drone was going to pick here. I thought the time we had him here on Gang, I prayed hard that it is not a blue drone that they send. But
I've always asked them to send a pink drone because I'm a woman.
But the joke is on that people recognize that there's a drone that will pick you up. So political human rights are way up there.
Oscar, I think the issue of human rights is something that none of us can trivialize. Like I said in last week's show, today it's Katesh in power, squeezing everyone's balls. Next week,
like last week, I said that's not a good.
No, but the balls were squeezed.
No, that's not a good expression for radio in the morning.
No, it's not. I'm not even expressing. No. There is a mayor whose balls were squeezed, and that is contravention of human rights, Oscar. So no, I'm not.
I don't mind.
I'm not using it as a figure of speech. I am using it as something that actually happened. So, Oscar, at the end of the day, all of us have potential to have our human rights abused. But I will point on two, yes, we are potential victims. You're in power today, tomorrow you're out of power. Like, for example, people calling other people terrorists and bombing them down, the next day they are the freedom fighters who are arresting you and putting you before commissions of inquiry. And at that point, you don't know how they will treat you when the power has changed hands. So it's incumbent upon every one of us to make noise if there is someone's human rights that are trampled on. So the key things are, how do we know? Like Abdu here has pointed out, to feel for another human being is to be human. So if you don't even feel for someone whose child has been taken in a drone to Kitalia and they haven't seen their child in 4 years and they are asking, can I see my child? And you're a mother yourself, then you're no longer a mother, you're a monster. So for me, to see some of these politicians actually defend these actions is very disturbing in the extreme. It shows the level of decadence that some of these politicians have descended into. But Oscar, the key things that bother me about our human rights situation in Uganda, and especially about NGOs, it can only be done when people are being paid to do it. Of course, there are people who are not paid and they're passionate about it. But most NGOs, you remember the Panama Papers when they leaked? We realized that most of these NGOs are in it for money. So we have to look into that. Would they defend these human rights if someone wasn't paying them to do so? Then the other thing is, why do we need the international community to breathe down on our necks before we uphold human rights? Why can't we do this? Because we as a group of people, but this happens when there is state capture. When a group of people take over and their governance is no longer representing the majority. So what happens then? To cling on to power, they have now to stamp down on the people who disagree with them or would like to take them out of power so that they get better governance. And what happens? Every year this number grows. So you will see in 2000, in the last election, they killed almost 100. Of course, they put the official figure at 59, but it was more than that. In the next one, trust me, there will be more drones and more deaths. But why do we need the international community to come and tell these people who have been in power for all these years? Why doesn't Katesh tell the NRM colleagues that, look here, you are head of police, you are head of SFC, don't do this? But we don't even have these voices. And there are so many people. But as long as...
Voices. I will give you examples.
Please do.
Because I was involved in the last election.
Yes. I haven't heard your voice about releasing these people who disappeared.
I can tell you.
It's, we have it on topic. Let's Katesh, don't worry, we'll address it.
Okay, you'll address it, and
topic.
Because in the last how many months, when did the parliamentarians walk out of parliament, the opposition? I haven't heard you, Katesh, coming to defend them and coming to, shout louder that these people should be released.
On this particular, you'll forgive Katesh. He's been on and off planes.
He's been outside countries, but he can tweet.
He's been on and off planes.
No, Katesh will tell us when.
Use the same methods of walkout.
Yeah, you can use your methods, and you see, in law we say justice not only needs to be done, but has to be seen to be done. There is a power in something being seen to be done. So if you're doing anything, please, it helps to know that people on the other side of the aisle are also doing something. So if you're doing something, please come out and help us.
Okay.
So the other thing, Oscar, and this for me is very, very important. In conclusion, as long as we are impoverished and poor and at rock bottom, it is very, very hard to find.
Now you agree with Kwezi.
Yes. Human rights becomes an aesthetic. It becomes a luxury. You're saying a house girls' rights are being trampled on, but what if they send them back to Chana Mukaka? Are they going to have a better life with all their rights intact? Because once you're poor and you're impoverished, you don't have a right to food. You don't have the food to have a right to. When you see our young ladies going to the Middle East to be treated as slaves, that is modern day slavery. But I, for one, will tell you I don't even speak out against it, because the option of them coming back and remaining in Bududa for the next landslide to cover them because they have nowhere to live makes that a better option. So we have to be careful when we are agitating for human rights. At the end of the day, our best fight against human rights is eradication of poverty. Because once people are poor, you could shout and scream and do whatever you want, and it will be lost in the wind. Because at the end of the day, you can't have a right to food that you don't have.
Okay.
Or medicine that you can't afford.
Aaron, I want Robert to have last word on this topic. So what comments do you take from around the table? Aaron.
We don't have, there is no dichotomy between politics and economics in real life. Human rights are indivisible. Indeed, I want to agree with them that there must be also focus on the economic, social, and cultural rights. Human dignity is the underlying value, it's the foundational value of human rights. And you cannot have human dignity when you're starving, when you're living in dilapidated conditions. Indeed, poverty is a major roadblock to realization of all human rights. So for us, the point of political and civil rights is to ensure participation in governance, is also to ensure that the liberty is not curtailed and that the people in power do not abuse it. Most of these political rights are really shields to personal autonomy, to personal liberty, and also to ensure that there is due process, there is fair hearing, and they are a good foundation for an economic growth. By the way, as part of human dignity, the pursuit of happiness is a core human value. So we want these people to have their freedoms so that they are happy. That's why we even guarantee these economic and social rights, so that people are dignified, they are happy. If you deprive them of political rights under the guise of developing them, yes, they will develop, but they will be like machines and robots. So we need people who have money, who can eat, but who also can express themselves. Who, if they come here, the host doesn't warn them like you did last time, to which type of drone I want. No, I want to come here, and know that I don't have to think about the drones, because this drone thing, we are even about to make it flippant. We are joking about it, yellow color, but it's real. It's real. Drones come at the wee hours of the night. They pick up real human beings, and many women and children are crying. So drones is a very serious matter. So economic rights, social rights, there are also a group of rights called collective rights and so on. But chief among them is the right to a clean and healthy environment. Last year, in September, it was proclaimed for the whole world. But in Uganda, we have had it for a while, the right to a clean and healthy environment. In the law, again, like the good Abdul stated, our laws are models. People come to copy them. What we lack is implementation of these laws.
Okay. Bob, Mr. Robert Kirenga.
Yes, Oscar.
What do you take from this show?
Thank you very much. I would like to appreciate
topic.
the contribution of the panelists, but I think there's some distortion of human rights here.
I see you looking at Katesh.
Yeah, Katesh and Kwezi. Human rights have certain principles. One, that human rights cannot be divided, that economic freedom is more important than civil political rights. Human rights are interdependent, and I'm going to explain this very well. So for you to achieve economic freedom is dependent on creating an enabling environment. What is an enabling environment? An enabling environment is where citizens exercise their right to participate in the governance affairs of their country. Look at the government programs aimed at eradicating poverty and uplifting the standards of people. What's the famous one? PDM. The Parish Development Model, Operation Wealth Creation, all these that have happened. To what extent have the so-called poor, whom you want to enjoy the economy, participated in determining what they think is good for them? That's participation. And for you to participate, you have to exercise these civil political rights. Accountability. That citizens or duty rights holders like me and you should have an environment where they can hold duty bearers, the likes of Katesh, the likes of Honorable Katuntu, to hold them accountable. How are you allocating resources? To what extent are you exercising your oversight function to ensure that resources meant for us to have economic freedom are not mismanaged? 3, non-discrimination. Who are the beneficiaries of government programs aimed at eradicating poverty or ensuring that citizens enjoy economic freedom?
Okay.
Next is empowerment.
Don't start now on that one.
To what extent are government programs aimed at empowering citizens to know their rights, demand them, and defend them? How many citizens in this country, a population of around 44, are aware that they have the right to food? That actually the right to education is not a privilege from the government? That they have to demand for it as opposed to thinking we to serve a government to yambi. And then the next is the respect for the rule of law. So you will see that for you to enjoy economic freedom, you really have to balance and ensure that people also enjoy certain liberties from the civil and political rights. Yes, we pay attention to them so much. The media likes it, and I'm not downplaying economic freedom, what it means, that a poor person cannot talk, but governments or states have a duty to respect, protect, and fulfill. These are tripartite obligations of states.
On economic disagreement between you and us, because
the disagreement is that we emphasize, you are saying we should not be talking about civil
we
liberties.
said everything must go along, but you focus on just
But on the economics especially.
Hang on, let me first also put to them, especially Katesh.
What you said to them, who are them?
To Katesh, people in power.
Why are you
People
running
in
away
power
from
and this
me?
Katesh.
I am in power with Abdul.
You are the one
Not
in power.
profile.
You are the one in power.
Maybe
But,
Abdul has more power than
Katesh, there's you sometimes in your rant, you nearly came out as an apologist.
Yeah.
And there's a man called David Mpanga, when he wrote an article, I can find it for you, and he called it "Whataboutism." Okay. I'll find it. That's what Robert is telling you. Yes, but Aaron, you wanted to.
So we normally tell our colleagues who are more on commercial law that there is no commercial law in Somalia. South Sudan right now. So you could be obsessed
Or
about
Gaza.
it. You ignore us. But once exactly Gaza, the situation, the appalling
no
situation in
commercial,
Gaza, those are war crimes in Gaza that are going on, and that's why I think South Africa has referred the matter, is moving to refer the matter to the ICC. Ironically, South Africa, which was running out. Yeah. So we need to focus on creating an enabling environment. There is an issue of investment climate. When you get the political right, when you guarantee political rights, they create a good investment climate. When an investor is coming or is making an investment decision, they will ask themselves, will my rights to property be protected? One of the reasons that England pulled ahead of the rest as an investment center, and actually even now London is a major center, for example, arbitration. Even the oil industry, they put arbitration clauses, not anywhere but in London. Why? Because of the rule of law. The trust in the judiciary in some countries attracts a lot of money. So, sorry.
Oscar, in conclusion, I also want to allay the fears of Namfi here, to suggest that NGOs cannot make impact. Well, it depends on what you mean by NGOs. We have human rights defenders who do their work as a calling. They may not necessarily be under any organization. And I want to invite the panelists here to come to Jinja when we'll be celebrating the International Human Rights Defenders Day. Then you'll see grassroots human rights defenders who do this passionately. And they'll be awarded. They will be awarded for the work that they do. People who come out and live what they are doing and go and speak about the injustices that other people face. They are not paid.
When is that? What day is that?
We have on the 8th, on the 7th and 8th.
7th
And our contribution to society, we're going to be planting trees in Jinja City. We're going to be donating blood. And then you'll also come to hear
send us the names. We'll also give you a mention here.
We will send that information. Thank you, Oscar. But generally, the important point I wanted to say is that the work of human rights defenders is a calling by all of us. The Constitution, under Article 20, indicates that protecting and promoting is every citizen's duty, though the primary duty lies with the state. So we all have a responsibility. But I must also emphasize that the struggle we are involved in right now in ensuring that human rights are protected and promoted, the dividends of this struggle is not going to be realized by ourselves, but the journey starts with us and the rest will conclude it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Robert. I don't know, it says Robert R.
Chirenga.
It says Robert R. Chirenga.
Yes,
it can't
please.
be Robert Chirenga.
No, it's Robert Ruchogoza Chirenga.
Okay. Thank you for appearing on Gang. Robert Chirenga is the Executive Director, National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders in Uganda. Thank you very much. Let's talk for a break.
The Capital Gang on 91.3 Capital FM.
Welcome back from the break. This is the Capital Gang. Quiet break it was. So, Kwezi, when I invited you to Gang, we had a chat, and I was asking you to come in and talk about Darfur, especially on a show that Abdul attend. It could be very informative. But you said to me, OSM, hold on. There's DRC as well.
Yes.
So a lot of us are sleeping about DRC. And then from the time you told me, I've been reading up on DRC. The elections are this very month. Many observers are saying they will not come to observe. So I don't know how you can present on both of those.
Yeah. You know, it's rather sad what's happening in our neighborhood. Of course, global attention is on what is happening in Gaza,
yeah.
which is very unfortunate. But I think we have, potentially 2 genocides in our neighborhood, and these are countries that are not far removed from Uganda. We share a border with them. We share a history with them, and in the first segment we're talking about the human rights situation in Uganda, but it's very sad that fellow Africans are being subjected to such horrors, and we're either not concerned, not bothered, or we're powerless to do anything about it. For the case of Sudan, as many listeners will know, since April this year, there have been clashes between, two elements, the Sudanese armed forces as well as the rapid support forces. Of course, the situation in Sudan is not a result of what happened in the last 2 or 3 years when Bashir was overthrown, but you remember how we arrived at South Sudan and Sudan. You had a regime in Khartoum that, had subjected a section of the country to, a worse system than apartheid. And consensus was that if we can help our brothers in South Sudan achieve political independence, then maybe we will, not have to deal with these problems. Challenge was that in dealing with people in the south, the Khartoum government had supported so many militias, amongst them the current elements of RSF led by General Hemedti. And it's these elements, after dealing with, they were created to address a particular problem. So there were a solution then to deal with, these people in Darfur, these black Africans. So that solution continued to exist, but without a problem now. And when South Sudan achieved independence, the fight, turned internally within Sudan itself, Sudan Khartoum. And what you see today is a consequence of that elements that were initially working together 20 years ago to fight SPLM are now fighting amongst each other. Khartoum is now a war zone in many ways, just like Gaza, which is unfortunate. And I don't see the situation in that country improving anytime soon. And even more concerning is how powerless our regional and continental security mechanisms are, that the EU or the AU, African Union, cannot even call the belligerents to the table. IGAD cannot call them to the table. When President William Ruto tried to offer a way out, he was lambasted by the Sudanese, and none of his fellow African leaders came to his defense. These people have only come to the talking table now because some global powers, including the UAE and the United States, who are their financiers, have told them now you can go and have certain discussions. Those are matters, I think, worth reflecting seriously about as members of the East African community, but also as Africans. The other situation that is even much closer to home is in DRC, which until the admission of Somalia was the newest member of the East African community. We know that Uganda is deeply interested and has been invested in the conflicts in the DRC. The DRC is a source of threats against Uganda, chief amongst them being ADF, and we've been in that country since November 2021 pursuing ADF under Operation Shuja. Now the DRC has an election coming up on December 20th, which is about 2 weeks from now, held in circumstances that certainly would not allow for an election, but we're having the election anyway because some people out there feel that democratic rituals in and of themselves are just about as important. So it doesn't matter if a country is at war or that, within a country you have certain sections.
Democratic rituals.
Because that's what they are. In 2018, the election that brought President Felix Tshisekedi had been postponed for, I think, about 2 years. And the president then, President Kabila, had said, we cannot have elections in these circumstances because of the ongoing conflict in the East. Now, you could have said, look, he's trying to postpone the election because he doesn't want to retire from office. But isn't it strange that President Felix Tshisekedi, 4 years or 5 years later, is raising the same argument and the same actors are not willing to listen to him? You're holding an election in circumstances where in Eastern DRC, I don't think an election can even take place because the government is not in control of certain sections of the country. In North Kivu, militias in Ituri and other regions are committing acts that would equal to genocide. There are groups in territories of Jugu, Irumu, that have been killing ethnic Hemas for the last 20 years uninterrupted, since 2003. And these killings are not documented. They are not. We are not concerned as the East African community, as the ICJLR region. And for me, I think for Ugandans, why we should watch this election, because there's a lot at stake. President Tshisekedi has been a key ally for Uganda. He has allowed Uganda to pursue ADF against so much pushback, even from his own party. In fact, yesterday at a rally in Goma, his own deputy prime minister stood on Ekadala and said Uganda and Rwanda have imposed war on the DRC. This is someone campaigning for the president. So if President Tshisekedi does not win this election, Uganda's presence or our continued presence there in pursuit of ADF will be in jeopardy. If ADF is given space to operate, I don't know if we can counter, the onslaught, because ADF is a wounded animal now. They are roaming outside the triangle where UPDF is operating. But if we allow this political vacuum in the DRC to continue, ADF could as well rearm and make attacks on Uganda. Not so long ago, just about a year ago, they made a daring attack in Ntoroko and killed several civilians. They also attacked a school in Kasese in June, and they've been trying to plant bombs in Kampala. So the DRC election is a matter of concern for Uganda, but also for the region. But also widely, I think the issue of how to deal with diversity, how to deal, in Uganda we've had this tribal talk and the rest, but in Eastern DRC it takes on a very interesting turn where there are citizens of a country that are seen to be more Congolese than others, and then there are these minorities that are being told to go where they belong but where they've never been. I think that's a very dangerous dangerous but they never came from Rwanda, they never came from Uganda. They are Congolese citizens with the same rights as their peers. So I think it's a worrying situation, and
you can't tell
for human rights defenders, something worth contemplating about.
You could not tell him go back from where you came. But just before you finish off, what about Tshisekedi and Rwanda and Kagame? Those he has declared that you cannot sit at the same table with him.
Yes, and I think at the launch of his campaigns, he said he will probably only meet President Kagame when they're in heaven, which is a very loaded statement, because I don't think President Kagame is about to leave the presidency, and it's also likely that President Tshisekedi will be around for a while. So it doesn't bode well for our region. Both countries are key pillars in the East African community, but also any conflict that has happened in Eastern DRC has tended to draw in Uganda, with or without our intention to. So these are serious statements.
Abdul, Abdul, just tap Namfi on the shoulder. Hang on. So Abdul, you it seems like a long time ago when you were in those areas, and right now it is a case of actual genocide in Darfur, even before you touch on DRC.
Oscar, I was a young man then, 2004, 2005-06, when that war broke out in Darfur. It was my first time in Parliament, and I was given this huge responsibility to be the Pan-African parliamentary head of the Committee on Darfur. I've never seen anything stressing in my life like my times in Darfur. I went through Nyala, El Jenina, El Fasha, including going up to Abeche in Chad. And I saw what they call suffering.
And now imagine it is worse.
Human suffering. You people, you may read, you never imagine until you see. When people are in a desert, they don't have a tent, but they are sleeping, and there's no food. and a family of 7 are sharing 1 kilo of cereals. It's so bad. And then the mother is dead, the father is dead, the children. It was a Holocaust. It was genocide. So when you had that conflict, and I have to blame politics. I met the late John Garang, and we had a very candid talk. My committee met him. We met in South Africa. At that time, he wanted to put pressure on the Khartoum government to conclude the deal with him, the Western Kenya deal they had reached, and Khartoum was still dragging. So he contributed to opening up another front, because there were 2 fighting groups. There was the Justice and Equality Movement called JEMA, and then there was a new one which came called Sudanese Liberation Movement, or AME, not SPLM, SLM. And that one, Garang had a little bit to do with it, such that they put pressure on Bashir to conclude the deal, or the Kisumu deal, Nakuru Kisumu. So you could see genocide. The so-called Janjaweed were militias who were recruited to fight these armed groups. And the rapid forces, support forces, has its origin in the Janjaweed. Khartoum built the Janjaweed. The Janjaweed eventually have turned out to be the monster that has destroyed Sudan. There is no country to talk about called Sudan today. I was talking to Ambassador Chinove last week. He was Uganda's ambassador to Khartoum. And they have closed. All missions are out of Sudan. Khartoum is purely a theater.
This is what Aaron talks about. Talk about commercial law in Sudan.
Where do you there is a group occupying this place today, tomorrow another group, like we had here in 1985. You remember when Kampala had the FUNA forces in Ifeawe, UFM somewhere, FEDEM somewhere, UNLA somewhere. That is what is in Khartoum today. And people are dying every day. But you ask yourself, what is this thing called the AU? These guys who put on their suits and jump on their planes that they go to Addis Ababa. What do they go to do there really?
And some money.
Because Sudan is a member of the AU. Where are these efforts we are seeing on the continent, where people are moving around to sort out a problem? Let us look at East African community, what my brother here is talking about. We are busy. Somalia also, you comes. Congo came only the other day. How many months ago? 24. Is that like 2 years? 24 months ago. Before we sort out the problem, even Somalia, you come. It's not a matter of expanding geographically, but addressing our issues. Our issues. And where the conflict up to now? Kinshasa says, I will ever meet Kigali over my dead body. Yeah? Unless God will be there to see both of us, meaning when we are dead. So we have not sorted out the problem. We are busy adding on other areas of conflict. You just see jokers at a political level. We really need to wake up as a country, as a region, and as a continent. Because let me tell you, what is brewing in Congo is brewing it at our very eyes. We see it happen, but people are keeping quiet. Sudan, because now the international community is Israel is involved and so on. Nobody is talking about Sudan and Ukraine. Nobody is talking about Sudan anymore. How many people are dying literally every day, unaccounted for, and so on. So the region is turbulent now, and I don't know whether we still have to go the Shekedi way to wait to meet before God, all of us, before we sort out our problem, or we can sit on the table and see how we can resolve them. Unfortunately, as I go for the microphone, Oscar, leadership at the topmost level, I think is doing a disservice to this region.
have not
There
known
is no
you.
leadership
I
there.
have not known you to be polite, or you are leaving all that to NAMFCA, saying topmost level.
It's useless.
Aaron,
Yes.
as I said to Kwezi, inviting him to talk about Darfur, he said, well, we are asleep about DRC, but human suffering in Darfur is, they are evacuating villages using fires.
Okay. These are mind-numbing realities that are unfortunately going on in our immediate neighborhood. First of all, we need to be human beings in respect to these people. If we can't stop this fire, at least let us be aggressive on a humanitarian front. We have a law to stop, to prevent human suffering. It's a human law. Even if we are not a state, we are a body called Uganda, we are a body called East Africa. We have obligations to our neighbors. This is not even, it's beyond law. It's logic. You can't see a neighbor's house being broken in and you fold arms. We need to ask ourselves, if the fire in Congo keeps burning, what will stop it from crossing to Uganda? What will stop the conflict from Sudan if it continues from spilling over? There's nothing. Right now, I had never met so many Sudanese in my life. In fact, it has educated me about Sudanese. I always thought they were Arabs, like what, but most of them look like the people here.
Especially
In Darfur,
and South Sudan.
to know that he's an Arab, he has curly hair, but they're blacker than me. They're darker than me. We're the same.
So,
The irony is they're all Muslims.
But
we need to ask ourselves also, because there is a consensus here that the political, our leaderships are silent on the problem. They are neither trying to solve it, nor are they even providing humanitarian aid. If we can fail to solve the problem, let us at least provide the tents. Can we, because we have been Pan-Africans in theory, in the debates, but can we be Pan-African in the real sense? But we also need to ask, why are we quiet? Because there must be a reason.
We are talking
There must there must be a reason why political leaders are in East Africa are quiet about a war going on, because some people, let me tell you, are benefiting from it commercially. People are getting gold from Congo. You get me? People are getting gold from Congo. People have deals.
Yes.
You get me? This
From America.
war is not just fighting. Of course, the ordinary people lose life, but these people profiting from these companies. Across Africa, they are saying AU is even as far as South Africa, as far as ANC, so like this thing in Congo is a big bonanza. We have illegal logging going on. We have minerals.
three lawyers in the
You
house.
get me?
I'm now seeing the folly of putting you next to NAMFCA. But three lawyers in the house. But hold on, Namfi. I'm still asking Aaron. You know, when you make these pronouncements,
Yes,
they
we
have
need to
be
make
factual.
them. We need to make them.
But
Can Capital Gang host Museveni, Kagame, Seged here? And
Look at the look of
because
given you.
these are the real problems. That's why people are dying.
Yes.
Me and the cartoons, what are we going to do here? You get me?
Yes, your microphone is not yet on.
People are
Yes.
dying. People are dying in our neighborhood, and they are dying because people are doing nothing about it. Who can do something? If you're stealing gold in Congo, stop it. Then we shall see an end to the problem. If you're sponsoring militias, stop it. Because what he says, like for
I like
example,
how he says, stop it.
this thing you are calling Congo is just like we are part of Congo. Congo is part of us. Go to Kasese. Last year I was in the.
Let's see
is
if
it
I can
Chivu?
get a bottle
Is
of
it in
water to
Chivu?
you, Aaron.
It's the same town as Gisenyi, isn't it? They are
let's-
separated by what?
Hey, let me get you some water as Katesh comes to the microphone. So ask the producer to get some water for him. Katesh.
Well, I think
Yeah, go on.
the issue for me is when I look at what is happening on our continent. There's some time back when I felt the continent was moving away from problems, getting into a phase when we were having quietness across until, of course, something started in Ethiopia, then from Ethiopia, and actually trouble started in Tunisia, then you know what happened in Egypt, then it went down. Then, of course, the Congo situation is permanent. After Ethiopia,
Even
Sudan.
the situation is permanent.
Now, for me, what has been ringing in my mind is, will Africa ever be quiet? And if so, what will it take? Because this is an indictment on our continent, both for the leaders and, of course, us as citizens. And I think the lessons need to be picked out. For example, what happened in Sudan, amidst those historical problems that were there, at least you had a country called Sudan.
You no longer have one.
Now, this political agitation that led to someone being forced out of power, and of course people now taking turns, I think we may need to draw lessons. Number one, how should we manage transitions? Because all these doctors and professors and engineers who were on the streets in Sudan saying, you know, you must leave Ajagenda, get out. Now, where can they even speak from?
Number one.
So it gives us a lesson. Number one, what is our role as citizens in changing power? These revolutions spontaneous without a common ideology and leadership. And when things have happened, there is nothing that unifies, that there is no glue that holds you together. It is very easy to destroy a state. And that's what has happened in Sudan.
Katesh, you know now,
Yes.
people are regretting why Bashir left power.
Exactly. And
Yes, if you talk to Sudanese themselves,
Yes.
they're like, I wish Bashir was around.
Yes.
We never had this.
Same thing with the Libya.
Idi Amin.
Same thing with Libya. So, as citizens, as Africans, we need to learn, draw lessons. Number one, when you agitate to set the whole city on fire, you know someone must go. When he goes, what happens? Who will hold the group together?
At some point
So-
he will go.
So,
Whether by nature or not.
yes, but we
Let's
must.
not advocate
No,
for
hold on now.
we
You're
must.
coming
We must.
soon
The
to the
political
microphone.
violence, political change of leaders through violence and agitation that is uncontrolled, that is that has no glue. Is very, very. Is part of it is responsible for our current problems. We need to draw lessons as Africans, that if you have peace, how do you preserve it? How do you move the journey from being challenged to better? Okay? Because, look, there were problems. A new country was created. South Sudan, we thought it had more problems. And the other one was stable. I remember when in one of the regional meetings we had a South Sudanese minister who was, when we were in Nairobi discussing, I think it was the summit of ESC, heads of state, in 2016-17. When he was explaining, we are still nation building, you must reduce the cost of flights to Nairobi. For me to come to Nairobi for a health check, I need to pay $800. Now I end up going to the people whom we cut ourselves from in Juba because it is cheaper to fly there. In Khartoum. We pay only 300, and he was just lamenting. And at that point, we were all saying, I had a friend who worked in the foreign affairs ministry in Sudan. But now there is no state to talk about, and worse still, there is no roadmap towards restoring even something. So if the human rights defenders in Sudan cannot even talk about it. So number one lesson is change of power. We must speak against political violence, against violence that has no growth. Number two, Africans, we need to understand that we are on our own. For me, when I see some of the political actors launching their manifestos in foreign capitals, surrounded by people on press conferences, that you want to change power in a let me tell you, Africans, we have to deal with our problems. You have said it when the war started in Israel and whatever. No one thinks about Sudan anymore. They are driven by their interests. The imperialists will only come in when they benefit. That's why I agree with you. The UN is no more. They have been in Congo for how many years? But they are involved in all sorts of things.
But it's economics.
So for us Africans to keep thinking, you will be protected, UN will come, and there is no more UN. If you look at the human rights situation across the world, even the people who are being released now through the prisoner exchanges between Israel and Gaza, you listen to the stories. And the big powers which preach about human rights to us, it's just impunity and hypocrisy. So as Africans, we must talk. I want to differ a bit from my brother Honorable Katuntu on the community. On the East African community. Yes, we are expanding. Maybe perhaps we should stop this big dream of African Union.
Expanding far.
Because
I want
that was
that 5 losers to sit together.
Perhaps maybe that expansion might be
and
a better model through which discussions can be held than the African Union. Because look at all the things that have been talked about: African Union, Continental Free Trade Area, what big statements, but there's nothing moving on the ground. So perhaps if ESC can start, it remains a forum through which dialogue can take place.
But next, it has failed.
So we should
remember Ruto tried.
Yes,
back in March.
Yes, but for me, I'm looking at the alternative of those big organizations. Finally, Oscar, you see, I normally see now what disturbs me. You hear every country now comes so and so African summit. Even small countries with 200 million people, now they so and so African. It's like the whole of Africa. There is no one who. Why don't you have
just take care? Abdul here is chairman of a summit coming up.
Yeah, but
in 1 month's time.
It just tells you where our position is. A small countries now, they grab the whole Africa and there is a summit. Why don't you have the EU South Africa summit? Why do we are going to be? It just disturbs. We must grow economically, security-wise, to stand on our own as Africans.
It raises quite an important point. To me, the summit is not the problem, but we as Africans, when we are going to that summit, have we discussed and said, okay, this is our agenda as a continent? That is the most important thing. But everybody just jumps on his Gulf Stream, flies there. Me, I want a hospital. Me, I want a road. Me, I want a what? Just a disorganized continent. Because you see, what is important is sit and say, okay, we are now going to Moscow. Just have your minister sit, your technical people sit, then they make up, they give you proper advice. Say, Rika, your relationship as a continent with Moscow should be this. Otherwise, we've gone back to colonialism.
We are testing coffee in Serbia.
Let's stop for a quick break, and then we'll have Namfi. We'll come back from the break. Namfi, now, your opinions, officially, we can have you on microphone.
Oscar, the other ones were unofficial.
The others were unofficial.
So you can't put them on me. Oscar, till the day we get honest with ourselves as Africans, we are going to go on and on and on, and us intellectuals will come here and sit here and say things. But at the end of the day, Kateshumwa is not the Prime Minister, it is Nabanja. When Nabanja goes to discuss Operation Shuja, or who was the Minister of Defense when ADF attacked?
The topic is Darfur and then a bit of DRC.
I'm getting there. You see, now I'm at ADF. I'm near the border. I'm getting there to Congo.
I see you are putting in the Uganda's Prime Minister.
No. You see, you can't divorce conflict from governance. And if we are putting this at the continental level, we've got to put our leaders on the table and go through them one by one. Their deputies, their deputies, their prime minister, etc., and the people who make these decisions. Do you know who is the current Minister of Defense in Uganda?
Yes, I know.
What is his name?
He's a general.
Honorable Vincent Sempich.
What is his background in conflict? You see?
Ministers
So
are
then there is an
political
attack
leaders.
from
You have
the
a civil
ADF,
service and so on.
And you see, at the end of the day, if we are not honest with ourselves, Rwanda is arming M23 rebels. They have homes in Kampala. They loot around the streets of Kampala, free. And then we, the same people, go and tell Shekedi, we are your allies. Come to the east. Come to this clowning has to stop. And then, Oscar, you come here and ask us to discuss this. Why? Why do you do this to us?
You
Look
rather
at
discuss
Darfur.
Gaza?
It's all, even Gaza is clowning of those people. Everyone knows the truth. But tell me something. Who is the biggest exporter of gold in the region? Where are these gold mines in Uganda that export all that gold? So tell me how the war in Congo is about to stop when Congo doesn't export gold but Uganda does. Tell me where Rwanda is supposed to become the magnificent beacon of hope in Africa without resources from Congo. How? It's a mere little district with not much resources at its disposal.
It has a very good human resource.
Very
intelligent people.
When did they make anyone rich? Belgium, anybody?
Human resource.
Okay. So what I'm saying, Oscar, unless we are truthful to ourselves, we will make farcical things as Uganda and Shekedi are in cahoots, but then we have Operation Shuja, and then we have the Wazalendo. You see, now what has happened in Congo is the people on the ground have decided to disregard whatever the central government is doing, take up arms and do what they have to do to defend themselves. That is the growth of Wazalendo, who did the attack in Kivu, the one we are talking about now, the latest attack. But then the people in Kivu are the same people in Masili. These are the same people. They are all, most of them, Hutu and Tutsi. Most of them are in Rwanda. Most of them, it's like Uganda and Kisoro and the Bafumbira, the Banyarwanda, and the people in Kabale. These borders are porous. So these are the same people. But I'm always saying, when you want to get to the root of conflict or any problem, follow the money. When you look at Darfur was started as a way to destabilize Central Sudan in the 2003, the Darfur conflict. Were there any governance issues in South Sudan and Darfur? Obviously.
Yes.
Because when I was in Juba, they actually told me that you couldn't even build a pit latrine in Juba without permission from Khartoum. That they did not even allow, for the longest time, a high-rise building in Juba, because the Arabs were convinced that the only way to govern these people is to keep them impoverished and below the ground. So when they rose up to fight for their rights, to fight for better governance, they had a good reason. But then you have to ask yourself, the Janjaweed, all these people, and the people fighting in Darfur, the locals, where do they get from the arms? You find that they're Americans. They are Americans. They are Russian arms, because we don't have any African country officially making any arms.
Apart from South Africa.
Apart from South Africa. But you can follow, actually, all the guns on the continent, you can follow. So when we say that the conflicts are raging on, there are genocides and etc., it is because at the end of the day, there is no willpower to stop these conflicts, because too many people are eating too much. I agree with him entirely that unless people stop eating, and men will never stop eating. I'm apart from like when I'm yet to see a female rebel.
Oscar,
let's have you conclude the topic,
yes.
Kwezi.
I think Namfi made some claims that should not go unchallenged. Yes, I think I don't want to discuss individuals, much less presidents of neighboring countries.
Let him conclude on the topic.
I think Uganda's reputation in the DRC has been a bad one, that it's hard to suggest that there could be good intentions in our relationship. But I think we've turned the page, and our economic relationship with especially the Tshisekedi administration has been a commendable one. Yes, gold exports in Uganda have been going up for the last 5 or so years, and it's, I think, a year ago, it was our leading source of foreign exchange. Not all of this is conflict gold, and I don't think we benefit from the trade by instigating insecurity in DRC. In fact, what the growth in trade shows is that Uganda doesn't need to be in DRC. You just need to create a conducive environment. And most of the gold that has been going through Uganda, by the way, is not just DRC gold, but gold from countries that you deem even more stable. Tanzania, Cameroon. There was a particular incident of gold from Venezuela. So Uganda doesn't need to be in the DRC instigating conflict there to benefit from the minerals. And that's the basis of the discussions we're having with President Tshisekedi, that through economic partnerships we can achieve prosperity, and that's why we've invested in the road projects there. I think for every African, it doesn't matter whether you support NRM, FDC, you have particular differences with President Kagame or whoever. There are certain facts that are very clear, that you cannot subject a section of your people to discrimination on the basis of the language or culture they did not participate in choosing. You cannot wake up and say so and so is more Congolese than the other, and therefore those who are not, you do not have these particular characteristics, should find somewhere else. And I think that's that's the situation that we have in Eastern DRC. I don't know if the M23 approach of taking up arms against their own government is the right one, but I think as a region that witnessed a genocide only 30 years ago, it's our obligation to make sure that minorities are protected, that their political rights are respected. And I think that's a position we should emphasize to Kinshasa. There's no shortcut to dealing with the M23 problem without addressing the problem of the Rwandophone community in Eastern DRC. How do you address the problems of the Rwandophone community? You don't shut them down by suggesting that they belong to a different country, but you deal with them as citizens of your country. Respect.
Now, if you hold on.
Now she has even let me lose my train of thought. But deal with the issues that are responsible for the rise of M23. I don't think supporting militias will deal with the problems of M23. You'll end up with a Sudan situation where now Wazalendo, FDLR and the other groups look like the solution, but once you've assumed you've dealt with M23, what will you do with those militias that you've now empowered and given the tools? And we've seen it before. Not in the Congo itself. The conflict currently is happening in North Kivu. But in Ituri, I told you, for the last 20 years, there has been genocidal violence against the Hema. How did that violence erupt? Elements of the Kabila administration armed certain groups, Lendus, to deal with whatever security problem was happening there. Once that problem was resolved, these people turned the guns against one another and ended up causing, what you'd consider to be a genocide. So the solution to the M23 problem is a political one, and it can only be addressed by Kinshasa. Dragging in neighbors, Uganda, Rwanda, whoever, I think cannot solve the problem.
Thank you. Aaron, lead on take the microphone, Aaron. We have two parliamentarians here, and maybe they will chip in last. So finally, the executive came on and gave a presentation on the 18 missing, saying actually it's been very, very difficult to investigate the 18 missing because people are unwilling to give information and so on and so forth. Maybe I'll ask the parliamentarians here why the speaker changed her mind, but in some ways this is interlinked with all our topics for today. So was that enough for you, Aaron Kiza?
No, it was grossly inadequate.
Grossly inadequate?
Yes. The language itself was unfortunate. Using words like riots.
The language was unfortunate.
Yeah.
Using words like
riots instead of demonstrations underscores the philosophical deficiency of the government mouthpiece in Parliament on that day and an attempt to obfuscate and turn an opportunity for accountability into a platform for propaganda. The specific question of 18 persons was unattended to. The guy went to the wrong places. He went to NIRA. He went to Interpol. He went to immigration.
Looking for the 18.
Looking for the 18. How would he get answers? If he is living in this country, either Otafire or the guy who read it or whoever authored this unfortunate piece of propaganda, he should have gone to Entebbe SFC. He should have gone to Mboya, CMI. He should have gone to the safe houses, which are listed even in attachment of the parliamentary committee that investigated human rights at some point. So there is an impression that the guy who authored this statement did not even read the attachments to it. Or like it's a hodgepodge of obfuscation. It's the most unfortunate statement I have got from the government of Uganda in recent time. A failed and lazy attempt to account for missing Ugandans. But there is a good side. Finally, I acknowledge the use of social media, but only to show that there was a policewoman who was attacked. Why is Facebook closed if they think social media is important? This statement was grossly lacking. And it's as if they didn't even read the demands of the opposition. There were 7 demands. 1, full accountability for November murderers. There is no accountability. When he mentions the compensation, it's in passing. He talks about generalization, but he is the chief. This is a masterpiece in generalization and sweeping statements. That statement, there is no full accountability. The accountability is just halfway.
Okay,
you get me? They talk about the death of Muslim classics, people who are died. He says nothing about the death. He only copies and pastes statistics from the prisons and gives it. That one can copy and paste just because it's coming from a minister. Pass for accountability. There is accountability for prisoners rotting in numerous jails without trial. He says literally nothing. He only repeats the law on detention without trial, the prohibitions. No. The law is good. What we are talking about is the practice. Prolonged detention, I'm happy even one of the MPs was crying about it. Prolonged remands. But unfortunately, even worse than a run-of-the-mill prolonged demands is prolonged military trials of people in a courts martial, but belonging mostly to a certain political class or faction. But one comrade asked recently, but how come even the ADF people are tried in civilian courts, but people wearing belts which are red are being paraded in the courts martial? One of the most unfortunate things about this parading of people with berets is that some of them are forced on them. They arrest a group of people, put them in marching the barracks, and give them berets, pictures. And then take pictures. I'm happy someone else knows about it, because me, I know more information about these things than the minister, clearly. Yeah.
First pause there. We go to NAFCA. You could finish the entire 15 minutes.
I have information on this thing.
Go on, Navi, on a statement.
Oscar, I was saying in the other break, I've dealt with one missing person. A young man who was in Kamocha. He wasn't even a supporter of, he was in Kamocha, but he wasn't an ardent supporter of NUP. And what happened is he was doing graphics for NUP guys, and they found his...
he was earning
from it, yes. He's a young man. He's trying to... He has a wife and 2 little children. And the wife came to us asking that they can see their husband. And we spent over 7 months looking jail to jail for this young man. And I used all the connections that I could get. Finally, we located him, and thankfully now he's in Luzira and she can visit. That is all we asked for. But even bringing him to trial, because they said he was making bombs, there is no evidence of any bomb made, or the bombs that these young people were making, and they arrested over 30 of them. Some of them have since been released, but some of them are still detained for no reason at all.
And have not been brought to court?
No.
Even that
there are no
man has not
charges
been brought to
against,
court?
no.
So
And
how did
unfortunately, I
Luzira
told her-
accept him if there are no charges, no bond, no remand, nothing?
These people do whatever they want, Oscar, because we located him in a safe house here in Kololo. That's where we found him, and I begged that they take him somewhere where, because if you have someone at a safe house, you can't access them or visit them in jail or bring them food.
They don't
But in
even have any
Luzira
rights.
or Ketalia, yes, you can, and Ketalia, even Ketalia, most of them can't. But you see, Oscar, if I didn't know certain people that I know, we wouldn't even have located where he is. And this poor woman was walking around. She had a baby of 1 month who was also sick and running from, police to prison to whatever. They just came and picked him up in a drone. And all he did was that. And I keep wondering, if these kids, 22, 23-year-old, are just screaming, we want better, we want to change power, and then you put berets on them, take pictures, and then you lock them up for the last 3-4 years, where is the sense in that? Are these genuine threats to the state? Are they? And yet these people think that it's all right to hold these young people and have their parents cry for 4 years, their wives, their mothers. Why? It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to anybody. And yet the minister comes and starts, the speaker comes, and everyone is just giving excuses. Parliamentarians walk out and we start ridiculing them. The opposition, that why are you doing this? But for me, so far they haven't done enough. I will know that they've done enough, and this goes to you, Katesh, who is in NRM and has some power to do something. When these people are produced, they are shown to their families, and proper charges. And proper charges are made against them, and they are tried in competent courts, and if they are guilty, they are left behind bars. They are given their sentences and terms. They serve them and get out. If they are innocent, they are released back to their families.
Yeah.
It is as simple as that. It's not
Crazy.
rocket science.
Yes,
On a statement by the executive and comments so far from Eronia Navi.
Yes, I've been scanning through the statement which Aaron carried here. I had hoped OO would be on this show to defend government's position, but sometimes it's hard to defend government's position in cases of such outright abuses. I think all this could have been resolved much earlier if we had had an independent inquiry into what happened in November 2020, because it's not a normal occurrence to have official, at least 54 Ugandans, including some, I think the president said about 24 of those were innocent people walking on the streets, shot by people wearing civilian clothes, brandishing AK-47s and all manner of weapons. And we just sweep that below the carpet and only wait for the opposition to raise dust 2.5 years later, 3 years later, for the minister to respond. Some of these events,
threats that they're going to be kicked out of parliament.
Yes, some of these events, like I saw the minister's account of the knocking of the gentleman Senteza. If this had been raised, in the heat of the moment in November or even January of 2021, but so much time has passed. So many Ugandan families cannot trace their loved ones, and then now all of a sudden a statement comes. I don't know what to make of it. Yeah, I don't think the statement in and of itself absolves government of its responsibility to account for its missing citizens, even if the opposition is complicit in a way, and that some of these people are not dead, are not in the country, but somehow they've been aided to leave Uganda and go elsewhere. It's the obligation of government of Uganda to prove it, not the opposition. Government of Uganda has the capability to track these people, especially if they are suspected of having committed offenses, or that the opposition is saying they are missing. I think it's the obligation of the government of Uganda to say, look, these people are not missing, but we know they are in this particular country or that particular country, and therefore, if their family members need to be in touch, they should probably reach out, so on. So government can't be absolved of its responsibility.
Katesh, Why did the speaker change her mind? And, now that they've presented something which seems to be annoying very many people, does government feel like we move on?
First of all, the speaker didn't change her mind. I think Parliament, the leadership of Parliament has been consistent on this matter. Government was given time. Government was not able to meet the timeline which had been given and requested for time because the principal actors apparently were engaged in ESC. And when they came, the speaker communicated that they needed to come on the floor and present. Now,
No,
the minister responsible requested the speaker to be given, because they were out of the country, to come. And we were concerned as members of parliament that, of course, it was taking long for government to come out and explain this issue. So there is nothing that there was change of mind. We were all concerned, and I think the speaker, about the need for government to give accountability, because the
change of mind was she finally said, okay, instead of telling these people to come back to parliament in whatever way, she gave an ultimatum to government to present.
Yes, because she
could have done that last week or the other week.
And they informed the members of parliament that government had asked for more time, so come back to the house, because even if the government was ready, they must find the house full to make a statement. So the statement was presented. The lead of opposition requested for time to respond, and after that response, that's on Tuesday. That's when we will be able to debate this report, dissect facts, and whatever falsehoods people are claiming they are. And I think for me, the issue is
and comment on
how do we prevent
grossly unfortunate
a repeat of November 2020. I think that's a political question we need to discuss. There are people. It's very bad for people to lose their lives, for people to be injured, include both the public, civilians, and those who are in security. The lady who was attacked by with a hammer, the police lady, she's actually our DPC in Shema Kasuda, and she has not been compensated among the others. So the question is, how do we as a country avoid the repeat of 2020? Both security, both the actors, and be able to distinguish between peaceful demonstrations and riots, because Aaron here, as his definition, what happened were demonstrations, and government says these were riots. So we must sit down and have a conversation about how do we avoid this repeat. But finally, Oscar, I'm glad we have lawyers here. Me, I'm tired of seeing these lawyers lamenting about justice in this country. They are here. Nafa is here. All these lawyers, we have the Law Society. They are the ones who cry loud about people who are in detention without trial. We have people who have we have judgments which have taken years without being written. And these are even outside the so-called military courts. What is your role as lawyers, as Law Society? You have let down the country. What is... No, because you cannot keep lamenting. Judicially, people are in Rosella, they are not being judged, judgments are not being read. People are in Rosella, they have lived there beyond if they were sentenced. And no, because you blame Parliament. Now it's my time to get you. You are here. You are lawyers. You belong to the Law Society. What have you done?
We are out of time,
Yes.
Katesh. I would have taken you on that one.
Are you a lawyer?
Without being a lawyer. I've interviewed a judge before who actually said it can take you 4 years just to get off remand. And we know who appoints judges. So he's the chairman of your party, sir.
No, they are.
Abdul, in conclusion. Katesh's presentation, he's seated in OO's chair, so he has to. I think that chair can give you comments. But Aaron, you wanted to say something. I'll give you just a minute because I can't trust you or Namfi or Katesh to conclude the show. Maybe Kwezi, but today I'll have Abdu conclude the show. But you had wanted to say something in response to Katesh.
Yeah, so as a society, we can do more. I want to agree with Katesh. For example, we can do more. I don't think we are doing enough. I think there's a problem of delayed judgments. We also see it. So we need to do it more. But that the bigger burden is for the people who should staff the judiciary with the right people. Yeah.
Okay.
More competent, more impartial judges, more resources. So even as I criticize the Judiciary and Human Rights Commission, I know they are underfunded, understaffed. I know we need the Kateshis to pass the legal aid bill so that people in my village who cannot afford my services can get lawyers who can represent them.
Concluding on this topic and being knowledgeable about how Parliament works.
And being a lawyer and a parliamentarian.
And and being a lawyer and a parliamentarian.
Oscar is
and a senior one at that.
In both categories.
First of all,
but social media today is going to murder Katesh. Honorable Katesh is an apologist to all government wrongs.
It is a tough place to be.
No, this is a conversation which is unfortunate. In this era, we should not be having a conversation about disappearance of people and
very sad.
that Ugandans cannot be accounted for. Because, we've gone through this before during the times, for example, of Idi Amin, where people would disappear and it is taken 20 or 30 years later for people to write about them, for the Odero Commission to unearth what happened. Really, this is a very, very unfortunate discussion. I hope it's a big lesson to all of us, those in the government and the entire country, that we say never should this thing happen again. And that's why I agree with Katesh, is that how can we guarantee that it will not happen again? Because it's quite ugly. It's very, very ugly. Because you see, there's somebody out there, and he's a mother. There's somebody out there, he's a father. And the kid is missing. Is a kid, and the father is missing. You can't explain it.
Namfi has spoken about that 1 month old.
You can't explain it. We need to find a way of how do we close this chapter with accountability. But let me really say this about the administration of Parliament. Before this thing rose to the level of being in the plenary, we have been party to meetings. And I have to tell you this. Unfortunately, some of these issues, we don't conduct business in the press. I have sat in meetings myself, government here and opposition this side. And how do we resolve this issue before it erupts on the what? On the floor of the House. We've had it. So you people are looking at the tail end of it. But the administration of Parliament, both the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker, have done their best to see that this issue is resolved to the satisfaction of the country. But issues of administration, issues of running a government, sometimes you will not be calling the press. I say, by the way, we are seeing this one is saying this and this. So that is why some people are saying, the Speaker changed their mind. And so she didn't. She's been to this thing right for the last almost 6 months. 6 months.
This is not rocket science.
Managing a country, Namfuka, is not managing a small law firm.
So
I am telling you, these are two different things. I can't.
It would be easier than managing a state.
Okay. We shall discuss that later. So the problem is, this thing is quite sensitive. There's no doubt. You see, when a person disappears, there should be accountability.
Exactly.
No, it is. Anyway, Oscar, that one we shall take it up from here with my sister here. Yes. So the issue is, the good news is, they have put up a statement.
That's good.
On Tuesday,
leader of opposition
he asked for a whole week to make sure that he find what we call a rejoinder. Nafka knows this, what they call a rejoinder. He has studied what they have put up, is coming with a counter statement of facts. And when they are put there for everybody, then we can take an informed decision either way.
Okay. Thank you so much, gangsters of the day. Thank you. Mr. Robert Kirenga, Executive Director, National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders. Aaron Kiza, thank you so much, human rights lawyer. Kwezi Tabaro, thank you so much. You gave us very good information. The gangsters, Namfi Abdul Katesh, thank you so much. Her children are back home from school. Enjoy their time with you. Hold them responsibly. Thank you, Star Cafe, for powering the gang. I am Oscar Semoyam Soke, and I shall see you next week.